Okay, folks. Are you ready for the next matchup? I certainly am. It's going to be on the Metalopolis. We're kicking it off in 3, 2, 1. Mark, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the bronze match right here between the one and only Mouz.Mana. He's in the green trunks and he is playing Protoss here on the Metalopolis versus his opponent who needs barely any introduction. Barely. White-Ra. So PvP action, and White-Ra is in his element here by the looks of it, and a failed 4-gate transitioned into Mana dying horribly. I think that's the best way to actually describe it. Mana took an immense amount of economic damage, and White-Ra was able to defend that 4-gate with great ease, with only 2 gates of his own plus a robo, which was very interesting, honestly. He held it incredibly well. Great force field placement by him, able to divide and conquer. I'm still kind of surprised that he didn't pick off that initial pylon, but hey, whatever. It works. It did the job. You can't really complain. Now, what are we going to see this time, more to the point? Will White-Ra go for the 4-gate of his own? White-Ra's 4-gate is very dangerous. Extremely dangerous, in fact. There we go. Gateway coming down here, so once again, no proxy 2-gate nonsense from either of these guys. Metalopolis is not a bad map to do it on, either. You can easily place it all over the place. Dump it down there. Attack from here. Gold mineral expansions are pretty good for that. In the meantime, Gateway's coming up for both, and I said I was going to analyze how they got to this point, so I suppose we can tell you about that. So White-Ra cleaned out Stefano quite nicely. He took a couple of games pretty convincingly, honestly, and then Stefano came back. White-Ra, in my opinion, kind of threw the second game against Stefano where he ended up losing. Stefano's second win, I don't want to take away from Stefano, certainly, but it was a bizarre strategy that didn't make any sense from White-Ra, and it was easily shut down by Corruptors. The first win for Stefano, however, White-Ra just couldn't deal with the pressure from Stefano, and it was extremely well played by him. And then, of course, in the last game, he went for some early air harassment, some Phoenixes comboed with a Void Ray, and then into Gateway units, which worked perfectly well. The next matchup ended up being against Nurchio, and that was incredibly tense, with Nurchio deploying all kinds of interesting strategies against White-Ra, and was able to finally crush him on the Terminus Re with a large force of Roaches and a significant upgrade advantage. Mana, on the other hand, he got here by first defeating Cut in an incredibly convincing PvT setup. Bear in mind that PvT is his best matchup, and he made that abundantly clear. It was extremely powerful. Unfortunately, he was not able to deal with Morrow, and he ended up losing 3-0 against his Mouse Sports teammate, and that is why he is in the bronze right now. The difference between the two, well, it's $100. The 4th place gets 100, and the 3rd place gets 200. Pylon coming up for Mana. It's exciting, I know. It's wonderful. I, too, am thrilled by this. White-Ra with the second gate, nothing coming up as of yet. I have to wonder if Mana will actually attempt the same thing twice, looking very unlikely. He's already got the 2 assimilators coming in, so all sorts of possibilities right here. Blink Stalker play seems to be fairly comfortable with that. He is putting down a second. As I say, I seriously don't expect to see a 4-gate of 2 gas, especially mining with it. I would think maybe 3-gateway Twilight Council for Blink Stalker possibly, or 3-gate Robo, also a possibility. We'll find out one way or the other. Economically, they, I believe, are pretty much equal, and they are. 25 to 24 right here. White-Ra should be fairly happy with the situation at the moment. He is very comfortable in PvP. And a robotics facility on the way up for him. That's going to be a 2-gate Robo, and Mouz.Mana with a 3-gate Robo. So that would indicate to me White-Ra might want to expand. Either that or he's going for incredibly early Colossus, and it would have to be incredibly early for that to really make any difference, considering his opponent is also building robotics bay, robotics facility even, and it's a 5-second difference between the two. Will Mana decide to get aggressive? Doesn't look like that's actually going to happen. White-Ra just having a look around and seeing what he could see. White-Ra with 3 Stalkers on the field versus the 2 of Mana. Mana actually warping an additional, just as I say that, typical. White-Ra taking a bare minimum damage as he scouts around, and he knows what his opponent's got, i.e. Stalkers, which is to be expected. Now we'll see what he decides to do with these robotics, more to the point. Now, White-Ra is sitting on a lot of cash. Another gateway to follow that one up. The earlier Robo will give him, well, a slight advantage in terms of scouting, honestly. I mean, his opponent decided to build about 5 seconds afterwards, so it's not really a big deal. It's an interesting deviation on the build, I suppose, if you want to look at it, but I'm not going to overanalyze that because I don't understand it. I'll be entirely honest about that. An Immortal on the way up for White-Ra, that makes perfect sense. Should be able to hold this line for the time being without too much of a problem. Once that Immortal gets out, then the Stalkers will be effectively shut down for the moment. Warp Prism for Mouz.Mana. That's interesting, considering Warp Prism drops are really the domain of White-Ra usually, especially in PvP. We saw him use it against MC, in fact, I believe, in the Korea versus the World Tournament. In this case, it's going to be Warp Prism drops for Mana and a Robotics Bay for White-Ra, which is problematic, assuming that he decides to go for more than one base. Both currently sitting on one base right now. No sign of any kind of increase there. Picks up a Sentry for free. Nice play there by Mana. Driving the forces of White-Ra back. Almost takes the Zealot. That's unpleasant. And the Immortal not able to bring its guns to bear. Observer moving out right there. And we do have a proxy pylon for White-Ra right in the corner. Much later, I might add, Robotics Bay. Very late indeed. No Blink Stalker for Mana as of yet. That's probably going to be a free pylon, and that's exactly what it is. A nice little bit of sniping action going on right there. The Immortal can easily take out that last one, and Mana with great micromanagement right there. And White-Ra actually losing a obscene amount of units considering the position he's currently in. It's not what you want at all. Now, what the hell is that Warp Prism doing? That's what I'm really interested in. Here it comes. 4 Zealots looking for some harassment at the rear. And White-Ra, is he ready to receive? He's actually rolling out because he plans to expand by the looks of it. And this Warp Prism drop could end up being very unpleasant. And it is, of course, Metalopolis, which means you've got the smoke right there. You can do all sorts of things with that. He's not going to bother with it, though. He's going to go right into that line. Does he have what he needs to warp in additional units? He does not. This is going to be a 4 Zealot drop only by the looks of it. And then he will be the hell out of there as quickly as possible. Countered very easily by White-Ra, driven all the way back. Will he deploy here? No, he will not. He is out of there. In the meantime, Colossus on the way for both. White-Ra has the lead in that regard. He's got one out already. He'd be looking to push out and do some damage. Expansion's coming up for both. That Warp Prism is still a wild card. Something to bear in mind. It may prevent White-Ra from rolling out with his entire army. And that is, as far as I'm concerned, the purpose of it. It's harassment. It's very passive harassment. White-Ra knows that his opponent has a Warp Prism. He knows that there's Zealots in it. He knows that he could be harassed, so he can't necessarily risk rolling out just yet. Admittedly, he does have a couple of Stalkers there, which might be able to clean it up if it were to come in. Splitting that army down. There's really very little in it right now, with the exception of the fact that Mana does have that expansion down there. It is finished, whereas White-Ra is slightly behind, and he also has a probe increase. Yes, he's got a probe lead on his opponent. Looking good. Very good. But more to the point, what will White-Ra do in the process? We've got a couple of Colossus on the field right now. He has the lead on his opponent in that regard. He's got a couple of Immortals in the mix as well. His opponent doesn't have that. His opponent has a lot of Zealots. Zealots will get hit really hard by the Colossus, and he should be able to clean up those Stalkers with the Immortals, but we'll find out. I think that White-Ra has the better group composition right now, but he's not willing to go in as of yet. In comes the Warp Prism drop again. Warp Prisms are really fragile, as you can very clearly see right there. Take a lot of damage very easily. White-Ra with a quick warp in for response. He can shut that down, and now deploying that. Is he able to take it out before it gets a warp in? No, he is not, so he will have to clean that up. But once again, as far as I'm concerned, this is delaying tactics and nothing else. The Warp Prism is actually going to get away as well, unless White-Ra gets an interception going on. Workers killed is 3 for 3. Units killed is 10 for 9. It couldn't be more equal if it tried right now. For God's sake, they have the same probe count. However, White-Ra is being kept in his base. Colossus count and, of course, those couple of Immortals will help. You'll notice that Zealots are on the way for Mana as opposed to Stalkers, which makes a little bit more sense. You don't want to build too many Stalkers. Is that a second Robo? Yes, it is. Mana going to the second robotics facility. In comes the Colossus. A little bit of War of the Worlds action going on right here, assuming that White-Ra decides to engage. Okay, what's he up to? What is he up to? This engagement is probably going to end up... I don't know. It's really hard to call. There's almost equal. Mana actually has a army supply advantage, but he doesn't have Immortals. So that might change things up just a little bit. Additional warpins coming in here for White-Ra. Once again, trying to bring it level. He's still 10 army supply behind, however. That economic advantage that Mana's had for a good portion of the game is starting to pay off. Wasn't huge, but it might be huge enough. We'll find out, and this is the engagement, perhaps to decide this particular match. It depends how much damage those Immortals are really able to do right here. Colossus holding up a little bit of micromanagement right there. He loses one. White-Ra losing Colossus. He's going to lose the second one as well. White-Ra collapsing right here. And Mana cleans that up quite nicely. GG, ladies and gentlemen. There you go. And the engagement did decide it, and it's one apiece in this best of 5 series. We'll be right back in just a few short moments.